This is BailStreet. Crime, finance, and everything in between. Hosted by Ira Jettleson, bail bondsman to the stars, and Danny Moses of The Big Short fame. This is BailStreet.
Welcome back to BailStreet. It's been a while. I'm Danny Moses.
I'm Ira Jettleson. Welcome back, Dan.
Good to see you, Ira. A lot has happened since we were last on air. We're now in June of 2020. The world feels like it's ending every single day. Hopefully it's going to get better. So I wanted to get back in the studio. One, there's a ton to talk about. We're going to talk about bail reform. We're going to talk about two of your favorite Steens, Epstein and Weinstein. We're going to talk about the Fed and the Treasury and what they're doing to bail out Wall Street right now and companies and people across the world. What's happening in cannabis, what's going on with Tesla. The
NCAA athletes.
The NCAA rule change that we've talked about on the show before. Photos Doulos. We wanted to get back in the studio because we felt like we'll have so much to talk about. And now that I know you know how to turn on your computer,
yes,
actually get onto Zoom.
Yes.
I can't tell you how impressed I am with this.
Well, I got my kids helping me, so that helps me out a lot.
Exactly. So we'll get to that and a bunch of other things in this episode of BailStreet.
Welcome back, Dan.
Real quick, what's going on? Bail reform. What's going on right now with the police situation? Love to get your opinion. I'm sure a lot of people would.
My opinion on what's happening right now, the world is going through a tsunami. It's a terrible thing that's going on out there. I think we all have to come together. It started with bail reform in a lot of aspects for me and also in the world. And then obviously what happened with Corona and the COVID situation where the world got shut down and people were losing their lives. And then boom, into what took place with the George Floyd situation, which is just a terrible injustice, a power-hungry police officer. But, you know, it's a tough subject to talk about. A lot of people don't want to talk about it, and I understand why. I take the position of hopefully that we all could come together and figure out, you know, how we could, you know, work as one. And hopefully we can get back to, work with what's going on with Corona. And obviously we could talk about bail reform, which changed my life a lot.
Why don't we talk about that? So state of New York, which is epicenter, obviously, of bail reform. What's going on there? How are you involved in that? And what do you think is going to happen?
Well, it already happened, which, you know, it's great, Dan. But, you know, obviously what took place was, you know, I was yelling and screaming and pleading to people because I said, you don't understand what's going to happen. I go, it's going to be a monsoon. It's going to be crazy out there. There's going to be people taking advantage of this system. And that's exactly what happened. And every single day in the Post, the Daily News, the Time, on TV, Channel 5, you saw what was going on. People that were getting arrested and getting right back out on the street. And people that got arrested ended up killing people or sexually assaulting people. And, you know, I was lobbying Albany. And I said, guys, you don't understand what you did here. You don't understand what took place. If it's not broke, don't fix it. And, you know, look, I said before on our cast, and I'll say it again, I believe there should be some bail reform. I don't believe some people should languish in Rikers Island on some low-level misdemeanor crimes. But any felony whatsoever has to have a repercussion to their action. There has to be accountability. And you see what's going on today in America right now with all the different governors getting together. No one accepts accountability. Nobody wants to take responsibility for anything. You make a mistake, something happens, it's this person's fault. You make this happen, it's that person's fault. And enough is enough. So we ended up getting on the phone with a lot of senators. I had a great conversation, State Senator Cousins, and also State Senator Shelley Mayer. There was some other people on the phone from Governor Cuomo's office. And they listened and they listened and they listened. We gave a PowerPoint presentation. We said, look, we understand what you're trying to do. We get it. But there has to be a monetary bail number out there for people that commit a crime so then we become their watchdogs. Because the police were getting ambushed and there were repeat offenders and it was absolutely ludicrous out there. And, you know, look, this is what I do for a living. I do bail. And I think I do a good job at it. But I am also a conduit to the court. And the court was relying on me to get these people to court. And the system was in place. Now, look, we all talked about what was taking place out there as far as some sort of reform. And we talked about it with Louis Reed. We had Louis on our show from Cut 50 and the First Step Back, and we said, and Louis agreed. He said, look, there's got to be some sort of bail, but there are people that were languishing out there. But we also talked about some of the people that wanted to stay in jail because they get 3 squares a day and they get medical. So, you know, there was a happy medium, and we asked these senators, we said, hey, Set up a committee. Set up 10 sitting law enforcement. Set up 10 bail bondsmen. Set up 10 DAs. Set up 10 judges. And let's get in a room and fix this. Let's get it right. I kept arguing, and I kept saying to people, this is like the NFL. And people were like, what are you talking about? Are you bringing football into the court? I said, yeah. It was called instant replay. And the reason they brought instant replay into it is because referees sometimes makes mistakes. And if they make mistakes, let's go to the video and let's get it right. That's the idea here. Let's get it right. Let's be the first state to get it right. And knock on wood, New York listened a little bit, not all the way through. And now you see what's going on out there where there's peaceful protesters, peaceful. And they're standing up for a cause. And now you have criminals that are taking advantage of this by looting and pillaging people that have stores out there that work their whole lives that don't have some sort of insurance, and they're stealing and looting, and they're setting up crime. And that is wrong, because they're getting right back out on the street, because part of the burglary and the rob is not in the new bail reform, and these people are getting back out and they're doing the same thing again over and over and over. And hopefully they go back to the drawing board again and they put some of the rob twos and some of the burglaries back into the new reform, so that if, God forbid, something like this happens, nobody knew a pandemic was coming and nobody knew what was going to happen in this world, but so they could go back and they could say, hey, if someone commits a crime and it's a felony and you're breaking into someone's store, or they're going to Saks Fifth Avenue, or they're going to Macy's, if we catch you, you're going to have bail. Okay, you're not going to get back on the street. And that's what I'm hoping for.
Let's talk about two people, because we're going to try to catch up on everything we've missed in the last year. But two guys that deserve to be.
You want to know about Harvey, right?
Well, I want to know about Jeffrey Epstein and Harvey Weinstein, the stories behind Epstein's death, which you seem to have a much better idea than most about what might have gone on. So love to hear that story. And then the update on Harvey Weinstein.
Look, we'll start off with first the one that I know the most, and that's Harvey Weinstein. Obviously, you know, I bailed out Harvey Weinstein on a $2 million bond. Obviously, you know, since we've last spoken in February, or actually put something back on the air, he was convicted and he got corona, and he's now in Wendy Correctional Facility in upstate New York. And me and him have dialogue every couple of, days sometimes, and sometimes every other week, to talk about what he wants to do about bail pending appeal, which we're discussing right now as we speak, and also what's going to happen in California for him. Trial was crazy. A lot of people didn't understand what was happening. There was some different things going on with the jurors. Nobody understood some of the notes that went back and forth to the judge. And at the end, he went down. I am speaking to Harvey consistently. I don't know if he's going to get bail pending appeal. They're going to try to see if they can get bail pending appeal. I will be there to do my job. That's what I do. And, we'll move forward with that. As far as Jeffrey Epstein goes.
Wait, I just want to touch on Harvey for a second.
Sure.
You don't think he should be out on the streets? This guy should never be free again for what he's done, whether it's whatever he got convicted of in New York versus what they're trying him for in California. On a technicality, getting bail versus being free are two completely different things, I realize, but this guy doesn't deserve any freedom.
Look, Dan, I don't know. Look, again, people look at Weinstein as the way they look at Weinstein, and they have every right to feel the way they did. They do. To me, this is a job, what I do for a living. Got bail. That's what I do. Okay? I'm a bail bondsman. If, God forbid, tomorrow, okay, you're a doctor, right? I'm gonna anoint you a doctor.
Not yet, but if I stay in quarantine long enough. But if I stay in quarantine long enough, I'm thinking about
it. Holiday Inn Express last week, but all of a sudden I'm on the street, right? And then you're a doctor, and I shoot a cop, and they catch me, but the cop shoots me. Now you go into the emergency room. You got to operate on them. That's your job, correct?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
I'm probably not qualified yet, but I'll get there.
This is my job. So do I like what goes on with Mr. Weinstein? Do I like what happened with Jeffrey? No. I have daughters. No. Okay. But this is my job, and I'll do my job. So
let's talk about Epstein. I know we've all heard some crazy stories, but what specifically story did you hear about that happened to him the first time he got choked out?
Well, look, I mean, everybody in the world right now is doing documentaries on Jeffrey Epstein and want to know who was on his plane and who he hung out with and who he was protecting and what really happened. And my take on it, obviously, is, again, this is opinion, but pretty strong opinion in some sources that, first time that Jeffrey was assaulted inside or went to the infirmary inside because he suddenly fell off of his bunk from the 2 feet that he was on top and was laid out on the floor with his AirPods on the floor with his bunkie sitting there next to him, who said that Jeffrey let him have the AirPods. So look, when you're incarcerated and you're doing time, there's a lot of things that go on inside. And I find it hard to believe that Jeffrey Epstein, on the first run, where he was choked out in his cell and then went to the infirmary and said straight out that he fell off his bed for 2 feet, and that's how he fell and hit his head. And then obviously we all know what happened the second time, which I've discussed, and the way he allegedly committed suicide with no cameras there, no COs. He was never moved from his original area, and where when you have an altercation, you get moved. When you're on suicide watch, and then all of a sudden you come off suicide watch. So there's a lot of things that when you have insight into what really happens when you're in jail. I have friends, very dear friends, that did many, many, many years. I mean, I had them in my backyard. Between them, they had over 100 years. And they basically say there's just no way that what they're saying happened. So, look, couldn't have happened to a better guy. He was an animal. I'm not a fan, but I find it hard to believe that someone offed himself when he was going to the Second Circuit 5 weeks from then to find out if he was going to get bail, which insiders tell me that he had a very good chance at the appellate division of getting bail. So wouldn't you want to wait that extra 5 weeks before you decide to kill yourself? Wouldn't you want to see and stop paying lawyers the amount of money you're paying to represent? He had 3-4 lawyers on staff that were coming to see him, and they were putting an appeal together. Then you kill yourself 5 weeks before you get.
I don't think he could ever get in the head of a monster like that, but I hear your point. He's not thinking objectively, but
people are going to say he was privileged, he was older, he's never been incarcerated before, he was in federal lockup with some serious guys. I get it, but this was a guy that has been around the block before, been around a lot of people before. Wait the 5-6 weeks to find out what the appellate division says, and then if they say no, we're not letting you out on bail, then I could see or perhaps feel that maybe he could do something he did, or try to kill himself. But to kill yourself in jail, I mean, how many suicides in all the jails do we know around the country right now do you hear about? How many? I mean, how many? You hear shanks, you hear coronavirus, you hear fights, you hear so many suicides with the amount of people that are incarcerated. But this guy, who was in for a period of time, knew how to cut the strips exactly how the prisoners do it. I mean, you got to be in jail for a long time to really know how to handle and cut those strips exactly, tie it tight, put it around your neck. The three bruises on his neck just doesn't make sense to me.
I know you know more than what you're saying, so.
Well, of course I do, but that'll be out in my next book called The Fixer 2. The Fixer 2.
All right, so I'm going to talk about a few things quick, and then we'll talk about.
Yeah, we got to talk about smoking a little weed in your world, which is called cannabis.
Well, that's not happening necessarily. However, in the last year, crazy things have happened. So obviously, it's still a popular sector from a stock perspective, and people still care about it, and they're trying to move legislation forward everywhere. But when we went off the air last year, it was right before the vape crisis. And the vape crisis happened. And instead of being an instrument for change, which it should have been, because everything that was in the vape crisis was from the illicit market. It was people buying vape cartridges, not from dispensaries, off of the streets. But of course, with something like cannabis, which is still not widely accepted, people jumped the gun, pulled vapes off the market continuously. You heard a lot of companies.
People were dying, Dan, just so you know. I don't mean,
no.
I mean, young kids were going into North Shore Hospital and they were 17 years old. They were vaping. They were dying.
100%. That's horrendous. And I'm not saying that.
And I'm going to say one more thing, and I don't want to cut you again. I love you like a brother, okay, even though you look like Will Ferrell right now. I'm going to tell you straight out that I spoke to Yemeni people. There were years and years ago, before everything went, and they said, look, we don't know what's in it. We don't know if it hardens the arteries or not. We don't know what it does to the lungs.
Oh, yeah. Listen, I agree with what they did by shutting down, pulling the vapes off the market. What I'm saying is it really put a stop to any of the legislative momentum that was going on for these companies. And it put a lot of companies out of business. And these companies can't bank normally, so they don't carry money. They don't carry, the way that they carry accounts receivable is literally go out and get it with a bag of cash versus, these are even traditional New York Stock Exchange listed companies that have to do that because of the Safe Banking Act, or non-New York Stock Exchange listed companies, I should say. Anyway, so that happened. Then fast forward to COVID, right? These companies are trying to raise capital. But what happened was the vape crisis ruined all the political momentum that these companies had. The Safe Banking Act was looking good to pass last year, which would have allowed, whether you're against cannabis or not, if you're going to make it legal in a state, you might as well let them use the banking system. So they pay their fair share of taxes. They have access to payroll. They have access to things. So that became very frustrating. And so it really exposed the companies that didn't have corporate governance correct, that bad management teams, that didn't have financials in order. And it's fine, but it's a lot of these companies are going out of business, but it's left it has separated the good from the bad. And I think now coming out of COVID was the last straw, because companies that were in the midst of getting financing lost it. And now you're going to see what's happening. Everything's gone backwards in a good way. So we went from one company trying to be in 20 states to pulling out each of these states because they don't have the money to do it, to now the mom and pops again that are the one company grows in a state like in a Maryland or in a Ohio on the medical side or Massachusetts are flourishing. Now, they don't need the access to millions and millions of dollars. They're actually doing on their core markets like California, Colorado. It's given these other ones opportunities. We've gone full circle in a sector that's still growing. And so there's a cyclical noise within this secular play, which has happened here. And I still think there's great opportunities. I gave a speech in Las Vegas, as you know, at the end of last year. And I said I would own 3 different companies.
I don't remember that. I was on the tables at that time, but go on.
I talked about GrowGen, which is kind of the restaurant depot, cannabis stocks. That's where you go buy your fertilizer. That's actually listed on the NASDAQ. I've talked about Cresco Labs and Green Thumb. Just two
So
MSOs.
You're saying right now cannabis is still a great investment?
No, I'm saying it's bottom up. You can't just go buy the sector. You better know what you own. I've always said that. You know that. I said you got to do your work and know what you own. And right. I never wanted to own the names in Canada. I always said that those were short. So it's a washout that just continues. But I do think it'll have political momentum behind it for the rest of this year going into the election. So I'm happy about that. Let's see, another one. So COVID happens. Yes. Federal Reserve and the Treasury come out with trillions and trillions of dollars. They brought out
I still have not got my money, but go on.
They brought out the playbook from the global financial crisis, and they took that and added, 10 other things. So there's about, between the Fed and the Treasury, there's $5 to $6 trillion, which has already been kind of thrown at this issue. And the stock market is now back to its highs for 2020, which is hard to believe. It's not hard to believe. It's just hard for me to believe. And just a lot of money that they printed. And they're printing money and they're buying assets. I'll give you a perfect example of the excess. So if the Federal Reserve has a program where they're actually buying fixed income ETFs, fixed income ETFs are actually part of the problem. We've talked about that before. BlackRock creates some of these ETFs. The administrator for the program is BlackRock. So BlackRock's getting a fee to buy on behalf of the government and buying high yield paper in an ETF. So the government owns things that have filed bankruptcy, like Hertz, like Neiman Marcus. The government, your taxpayer now owns those bonds as part of the ETF. So they're spraying everything at it that they can. It's unlimited. They're going to keep going. And the market, people in the market just believe they're just going to keep printing money and to make this go away. I love gold because of this. You're debasing the currency.
You've been loving gold for years.
Gold's done fairly well. $1,700. It's, kind of moved its way up from $1,200, $1,300 the last couple of years. It's been a steady climber, but I don't see any other way of gold not working anymore. And if our rates go negative, if the Fed goes to negative rates, the biggest hit on gold is it doesn't yield anything.
I actually took some of my feelings out of my mouth just recently to pay my mortgage. I haven't been working in a while.
All right. So those are just two things that have been going on. And before I get to some other stuff, let's get back into kind of issue we talked about. We had Michael Lewis on the show. We actually talked about it specifically, was athletes in the NCAA getting paid.
Yes, and I got a few phone calls on those cases when it went down. And it turned out to be the feds. And, obviously I couldn't do any bail on the feds, but I was consulting with some attorneys on what took place with some of the guys that got jammed up.
Yeah, but I'm talking about, they've now passed reforms where in the 21-22 season, NCAA athletes are actually going to be able to receive endorsements. So I'm talking about, we thought, colleges benefit from using the name, the players. So now they've passed a law where you can get endorsement. So they haven't passed it yet, but they're proposing. So for the 21-22 season, college athletes will be able to be on social media. We'll be able to be in commercials.
Yep.
They won't be able to use like their team name. They won't be able to use the college name, but they can use themselves. But you know what's going to happen? What's going to happen now is that if you're an agent or you're a coach, you're doing a side deal now because you're like, listen, you're going to come play for us, and I've hooked up already your endorsement package here to the right and hand it up. There's going to be corruption, but it's just good to see that there was some type of development there.
It was bound to happen. I still think the NCAA is going to try to fight as much as they could in the courts, but they're going to lose.
Right. Let's talk about the Fotis Dulis story. So, I mean,
Fotis Dulis. Obviously, if the world doesn't know, that is the gentleman that allegedly, and I use the word allegedly, killed his wife up in Connecticut. They've never found the body. He had a girlfriend that was also a lawyer that was arrested. I was originally called on the bail and they stopped calling me. I guess they went to another bondsman, which the attorney advised them not to do it. And then, of course, what happens is that they called me back, months later, and that they wanted to revoke the bond on Dulis for whatever reasons. We're not going to get into that. And I was coming in almost like Mariano Rivera to come in and save the day. I was talking to the Dulis crew, his new, call it friend out there, that was calling me to come in and step in. And I was talking to Mr. Dulis roughly about 11 o'clock that day. And the next thing you know, I was actually sitting with Tony Aiello from Channel 2 News on a different case. And Tony goes, "Hey, Ira, do you see what's going on out there?" I go, "What's that?" He goes, "There's a drone over Dulis' house." I said, "What do you mean a drone?" He goes, "There's a drone." And I look, he goes, "That's Dulis on the ground." I said, "No, it can't. I'm supposed to be going up there in about an hour to post a $6 million bail." He's like, "No, look." And Dulis had killed himself or committed suicide, which he was still alive for a little while with a beating pulse. And then allegedly, we went back and forth. We didn't know what was really going on. And then, it turned out later on that he did commit suicide, and they brought him to the hospital, and he died later on. And, Dulos, it was kind of a little shattering for me too, also to know that, this guy, I was on the phone with him 10, 15, who knows what time before this thing went down. And, I got, a lot of people that called me, including my cousin, who said, "How dare you bail this man out?" Blah, blah, blah. I go, "This is my job." I go, "You're going to talk to me about morals?" And, and that's what happened with Fotis. And we talked about that. And, it was a big topic in my house on what took place there.
Right. I want to get to some other stuff, but also I got to mention Tesla because I want to see you laugh and smile and all that jazz. But
I love it. It's one of my favorite topics.
So let's be clear that we were on. It was $300-400 last, and it dropped to $175. Obviously,
predicted.
Yeah, but I didn't cover it all there, so that's my bad. I never believed people would still believe that this is going on at this point. Stock hit $950 today. They've raised money. They've come to the market, I think, 2 times since we last spoke. Raised billions of dollars still, but nothing's really changed. They're not making money. Nothing's really changed. But this guy has aligned himself. I give him credit.
He also has one of our friends is with him now.
So we had a former guest, people may know, they're called BailStreet, Alex Spiro, who's now representing him.
Yes.
But I'd love to get Alex on. I can't imagine he's going to want to talk about anything.
I don't know, but we'll try to get him on.
Yeah, exactly. So it's hard to believe where it is. There's other stocks that are even crazier. Hertz files bankruptcy. It's up 200% in the last 2 days. So I guess if you file bankruptcy value, your company goes up these days because we are seriously at the breaking point of lunacy as it relates to many of these companies. But listen, I mean, beauty's in the eye of the beholder, and some people see it. I will say this. I always joked about the Musk-Trump kind of demagoguery connection of those two guys, right? People that want to believe in these people at any cost and just follow these guys around. What's crazy is the two came together a few times over the last 6 months. Once physically at the NASA launch for SpaceX, and a couple times when Trump mentions them out of nowhere at Davos in Switzerland at the World Economic Forum. And then they kind of tweeted at each other that we should open up because of COVID. There's something there going on. I don't know if it's Kushner related or where.
Another conspirty situation.
Not a conspiracy theory. Okay. It's pretty obvious. But anyway, I'd short both of those people. Anyway, we'll see what happens. But I think it's an opportunity. I just don't. It's a $180 billion company right now.
Let's talk. Look, we got a lot. We were gone. We took a hiatus. We were on a timeout. Whatever you want to call it. We are now coming back, and we're going to come back strong. Like Welcome Back, Kotter. And we got a lot to talk about. We're going to have a lot of different guests moving forward. We talked about this. We're going to try to get on Mitch Diggs from the Wu-Tang. He was also the actor in American Gangster. We're going to talk about Ray Rice, good friend of mine, who obviously is now training my son. You have the relationship with Mike Tyson from Cannabis. We're going to try to get Mike back on. And, we're going to try to see whoever, maybe even get Michael Cohen on. I was working with Michael prior to him going to Otisville, who's now been released from COVID. 19 on the compassionate release, where a lot of different prisoners were released recently because of the compassionate release from the COVID-19 situation. But, look, I'm excited about what we got going forward, and look, we got Tesla.
You're such a
we got Cannabis. But we got a lot of different things that we could talk about. And, you're gonna make people a lot of money when they listen to this podcast.
Well, at some point. I hope so. And no, let's talk about, it's going to be great. I can't believe that BailStreet, the whole idea of it is people might, it was a crisis in 2008 about people bailing people out, you bailing out Dominic Strauss-Kahn. We're now back full circle to a global financial crisis. You're not bailing out the head of the, IMF.
Yeah,
at the same time, the world is crazy and our two worlds are colliding again.
Again. It always
Firms are getting bailed out. People are getting bailed out, right? So it's going to be an interesting time, and I think I'm glad we're back in doing this. I didn't know this was. I know you didn't even know Zoom existed. So
no, I didn't know.
This is good to actually do this, and I could tie you down and get you to come on. So, well, with that, Ira, it's great to see your face.
It is too.
I like that fedora. It looks.
I'm going to go on. Let me tell you. Why we do these virtuals right now? I'm going to wear a fedora.
Okay, fair enough. And I'm just going to keep growing my hair out.
Yeah, we got to be ourselves.
You got it. All right, love you, buddy. All right,
love you too.
Be good.
Hey.
Talk soon.
BailStreet.
We're back.
We're back.
That'll wrap it up for this episode of BailStreet. You can subscribe to our podcast at bailstreet.com or any other service that you use to download podcasts. We'll see you next time on BailStreet. I'm Danny Moses.
I'm Ira Jettleson.